Chapter 1. The Council's Proposal. The Galactic Council Chamber was a spectacle of silent power. Vaulted ceilings towered above rows of seats arranged in an immense circle, each occupied by representatives from the galaxy's most advanced species. Holographic screens hovered in front of each member, displaying detailed maps of their home planets, a reminder of their stake in this interstellar congress. And in the center of it all, under the bright, focused spotlight, stood Ambassador Lee, humanity's voice among the stars. Lee felt the weight of thousands of eyes fixed on him, some curious, others skeptical, and a few openly hostile. His suit, understated and tailored, contrasted sharply against the elaborate robes, armor, and carapaces of the other council members. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. Today, he was presenting Earth's most radical proposal yet, a peace accord. Not a military alliance, not a pact for resources or territorial control, but a commitment to prevent war. He knew it was ambitious. He also knew it was humanity's best chance to reshape its standing among the stars. High Commander Zarek, the towering, armored representative of the Asliel, glowered from across the chamber. With leathery, scaled skin and eyes that glowed an unnatural orange, Zarek was the very image of an interstellar warrior. The Asliel were infamous for their battles, feared for their ruthlessness, and admired for their strength. Zarek's gaze never left Lee, his expression a mixture of disdain and curiosity, as though he was watching an insect trying to lift a boulder. Ambassador Lee, Zarek's voice, deep and gravelly, echoed through the hall, amplified by the chamber's acoustics. You speak of peace, and yet, your species has waged war on itself for millennia. What could possibly make us trust that humanity is capable of peace? Lee looked up, meeting Zarek's glare with steady resolve. Commander Zarek, it's precisely because of our history that we know the cost of war better than anyone. We've paid for it in blood, in resources, in countless lives lost. We've learned, peace is harder, but it's worth fighting for. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber as Lee's words settled. The holograms flickered, showing scenes from Earth's past, the wars, the destruction, the relentless drive to rebuild. Every race present had access to Earth's history, and the dark chapters were well known. But this was the first time anyone had dared to suggest that humanity's past could be an asset rather than a stain. Zarek snorted, his lips pulling back to reveal jagged teeth. So you say, he sneered. But history is not so easily rewritten, Ambassador. And weakness is not easily concealed. How can we be sure your kind would not turn on us as you've turned on each other? Lee felt his pulse quicken, but he kept his voice calm. Because we've learned restraint, Commander. Because we've faced our worst selves, and we know what's at stake if we don't strive to be better. What we're offering isn't a show of weakness. It's a commitment to prevent needless conflict. It's an alliance for peace, a shield, not a sword. Words. Zarek dismissed him with a wave of his clawed hand. And words are easy, are they not? Anyone can vow restraint. Yet when fear comes, when power calls. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Peace is the luxury of the weak. The council was silent, the weight of Zarek's accusation hanging heavy in the air. Lee knew this was the heart of the matter. The council members feared that humanity's shift toward peace was merely a tactic, a smokescreen to hide its ambitions. And Zarek, whose species had only known strength through dominance, had no concept of cooperation that wasn't enforced by power. One of Lee's advisors, seated among the human delegation, leaned forward, whispering, Sir, we should remind them of the Hadion Treaty. Our alliances aren't based on. Lee raised a hand, silencing him. This wasn't about pointing to treaties or past alliances. It was about changing a perception. Lee turned back to the council, his gaze intense, cutting through the quiet tension. Strength isn't just about domination, Commander Zarek, he said, his voice firm. True strength lies in knowing when not to use it. Humanity isn't here to conquer. We're here to build something greater than any one of us. An alliance that protects, that values life, and that seeks a future beyond fear and conquest. Yes, we're capable of violence. No one here doubts that. but we're also capable of peace. And that's what we're choosing." A quiet, resonant voice broke the silence. It was Tevrin, a crystalline entity from the Zyrene, known for their pacifistic nature. The human speaks of a vision, a galaxy united not by fear, but by trust. This is a rare thing, this willingness to choose restraint when one has the power to harm. Perhaps it's worth considering. A murmur of agreement rippled from a few council members. Others, though, remained wary, their screens reflecting centuries-old images of Earth's wars. Zarek, however, remained unmoved. "Then prove it," he challenged, his eyes narrowing. "Prove to us that humans are not the war-hungry beasts our histories have shown. You want peace? Then let's test that resolve. There is a human colony, is there not, on the edges of a Sleal space?" Lee's stomach dropped. He knew where this was headed. Zarek continued, his voice thick with calculated malice. "The Sleal fleet happens to be conducting maneuvers nearby. Let us see if humans will hold to their ideals when their own are in danger. Will they run? Will they strike? Or will they stand by their precious peace?" A chill swept over the chamber. Lee felt the eyes of every council member shift to him, weighing his response. Zarek's challenge was a trap, a carefully laid snare to see if humanity would respond with force or falter in the face of threat. Lee's jaw tightened. "Commander Zarek," he said, each word a measured beat, "if that's what it will take to prove our intentions, then so be it. But know this, humanity is not the same species it once was, and we will show you." The council chamber buzzed with intrigue as Lee's words settled. He could feel the rise of anticipation, the uncertainty, and, somewhere deep beneath it, the smallest glimmer of possibility. Humanity's resolve had been called into question, and now it was up to him to answer. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, A Test of Resolve. A shrill alert echoed through the human delegation's quarters, snapping Lee out of a restless sleep. His communicator flashed red, a sign of priority communication. He took a steadying breath before pressing it, his fingers lingering over the device. He knew what this was about. The face of Commander Sarah, his lead strategist stationed on the frontier, appeared, her expression as tense as he'd ever seen an ambassador. "We have a situation." Lee's chest tightened. "Be a Sleal?" Sarah nodded grimly. "They're staging training exercises directly outside the orbital boundaries of Enceladus Prime. There's no indication they intend to engage, but their positioning, it's deliberate. They're testing us, sir. Enceladus Prime. Humanity's pride and proof of their adaptability. A colony built within Saturn's frozen moon, replete with biodomes and newly established towns. It was a symbol of everything Lee had just promised the Council. Resilience through unity, strength through peace. And now it was at risk. He clenched his jaw, his mind racing through options. What's the colony's status? All civilians are in designated safe zones. Our defensive units are in place, but they're under strict orders to hold position unless attacked. Sarah's voice softened. They're waiting for your command, Ambassador. Lee's fingers tapped rhythmically on the table as he considered his next move. If he ordered the colony's defenses to activate, it could escalate into an open conflict, exactly what Zarek wanted. But if they did nothing, they'd appear weak, vulnerable. "We maintain our position," he said, a calm clarity settling over him. "The Asleal expect us to falter, to lash out, but we won't give them the satisfaction. I want all communication channels with the Asleal fleet open. They're going to know we're watching." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, relief evident in her voice. She'd served alongside Lee long enough to know that his quiet resolve often masked an unyielding strength. This wasn't a man who would let fear dictate his actions. As Sarah's image faded, Lee activated his personal console, scanning the council members' profiles. He needed allies, those who could be swayed by a demonstration of humanity's restraint. He began drafting messages, strategic but sincere, framing humanity as a species committed to progress through cooperation, even under threat. A notification blinked. It was a message from Tevrin, the crystalline entity who had spoken up in the council. Its translucent figure shimmered on Lee's screen, each word resonating with quiet wisdom. "Ambassador, I sense the Asleal's intent to provoke you. Your response will define humanity's reputation among the council. Lee nodded, his fingers tightening slightly as he typed. I believe in humanity's restraint, Tevrin, but I worry that inaction will be misinterpreted as weakness. Tevrin's reply came slowly, each word like a ripple through crystal. Strength lies in conviction, Ambassador. To know when to act is wisdom. To know when to wait is strength. Be a Sleal no force. Show them what they do not understand. Lee leaned back, absorbing the words. In the realm of war, inaction often seemed like defeat. But here, in this delicate balance of interstellar politics, waiting could be the hardest, most courageous choice of all. Hours passed in tense silence as Lee and his advisors monitored the situation. The Asleal ships drifted ominously close to Enceladus Prime's orbital borders, their sleek, dark hulls casting long shadows over the colony below. The human settlers, though trained in emergency protocols, were nervous. Lee received reports of murmurs among the colonists, fear creeping into their minds. A direct line from Commander Sarah crackled to life. Ambassador, the Asleal fleet's flagship is broadcasting on an open frequency. Put it through, Lee said, straightening in his chair. The screen shifted to reveal Zarek, his expression filled with barely concealed satisfaction. Ambassador Lee, he drawled, his voice thick with mock politeness. It seems our fleet has caused unease among your people. Lee returned the gaze, his face unreadable. Your so-called exercises are in violation of our non-interference boundaries, Commander. I trust this is merely an oversight. Zarek's grin was all teeth, predatory. Peace is a fine sentiment, Ambassador. But one must wonder, are your people prepared to uphold it when faced with a true threat? His tone dripped with condescension. Or are they already cowering behind their walls? Lee leaned forward, his voice calm but laced with iron. Humanity does not cower, Commander. We do not hide. We understand restraint, a concept I'm beginning to think you find difficult to grasp. A flicker of surprise passed over Zarek's face, quickly replaced by a hardened sneer. We shall see. I am curious to see if your restraint lasts when we edge a little closer. He leaned back, signaling his crew. Let us see what humanity's resolve is truly worth. The transmission ended, leaving Lee staring at the blank screen. He felt the eyes of his advisors on him, their apprehension palpable. But Lee's face remained composed. Keep the fleet on standby, he instructed Sarah. No one fires without direct orders from me. One of his younger advisors, eyes wide with fear, spoke up. Ambassador, if the Asleal breach our orbit, shouldn't we defend ourselves? If we don't, they'll see us as weak. Lee turned to the young man, his expression unwavering. Fear can drive people to act rashly, to forget themselves in the face of threat. But we won't let fear control us. Our strength lies in our resolve, in our commitment to peace. Sarah's voice softened as she looked at him. Sir, with all due respect, Zarek is pushing hard. If this continues, even the Council may start to question our stance. Lee gave a small, grim nod. Then they will question, and they will watch as we refuse to break. He glanced at the screen showing the Asleal fleet, each ship a silent, foreboding shadow against the stars. Let Zarek watch. Let him throw every taunt, every threat. Humanity has already faced worse. And we are still here. The words hung in the air, a quiet but unbreakable conviction that filled the room. They were outnumbered, under constant watch, but Lee's calm, steady gaze gave his advisors a flicker of hope. Here was a leader who believed in the power of restraint as much as in the power of action. Keep the channels open, he said, his voice steady. If Zarek wants to test us, then we will give him an answer he'll never forget. Into Chapter 2. Chapter 3, Edge of the Precipice. The tension in the control room was suffocating, each person riveted to their screens as the Asleal fleet inched closer. Commander Sarah's voice was a low, steady cadence as she issued orders to the tactical officers. Still, Lee could feel the quiet, anxious energy building around him, a palpable blend of fear and uncertainty. He clenched his fists, maintaining his outward composure, a pillar of calm in the storm. Status update, Lee requested, his tone measured. Still holding just outside Enceladus Prime's orbit, Ambassador, Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. No signs of active weapon systems, but they're deliberately staying within visual range of our defensive positions. Provocation, Lee murmured. He leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the monitors. The Asleal ships moved in eerie synchronization, like predators circling their prey. Every instinct told him to hold the line, to avoid the violent confrontation Zarek wanted. But this silent aggression from the Asleal weighed heavily on his conscience. It was an insult to humanity's sovereignty, a message meant to undermine the peace he had so carefully cultivated. Just then, Tevrin's crystalline form materialized on a nearby screen. Its voice resonated like a quiet chime. Ambassador Lee, I sense conflict within you. Lee allowed himself a faint smile. Conflict might be an understatement. Zarek's playing a dangerous game, and he's betting that we'll fold under pressure. Tevrin's gaze seemed to pierce through the screen, its calm aura an odd contrast to the urgency of the situation. The Asleal are creatures of dominance. They understand power as a force to be wielded. Restraint, to them, appears as vulnerability. Lee nodded, understanding. They'll keep escalating until we respond, but if we retaliate, we play right into their narrative. He paused, his eyes fixed on Tevrin. Then we show them a new kind of power. At that moment, an alarm blared across the command center. Sarah's head snapped up, her voice urgent. Ambassador, we have an unauthorized signal from Enceladus Prime. It's... The voice crackling over the speakers was thick with emotion. This is Captain Morgan of the Enceladus Defense Unit. I'm breaking protocol to speak directly. We can't just sit here and watch them encroach on us. Our people are frightened. We're ready to defend ourselves. Lee's jaw clenched. He understood the captain's frustration. How could he not? He tapped the control panel, opening a line to Morgan. Captain, I need you to hold position. I know it's hard, but this is a delicate situation. The wrong move could mean war, and we're all here to prevent that. Morgan's voice returned, softer, but laced with frustration. Understood, sir. But with all due respect, we're looking right at them. If they cross that line, I don't know if my men will stand down. Lee hesitated, then spoke with calm authority. Captain, remember that our strength doesn't lie solely in our weapons. It lies in our resilience. We hold the line, together. Morgan's silence lingered for a moment before he responded, his tone resigned. Yes, Ambassador. We'll wait on your word. As the connection closed, Sarah turned to Lee, her brow furrowed. How much longer can we keep holding, sir? Every moment we wait, the Asleal grow bolder. Lee exhaled slowly, his gaze hardening as he made his decision. Sarah, broadcast a message to the Asleal fleet, public channel, open frequency. A murmur rippled through the command center as everyone turned their attention to the screens. Sarah nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the controls before she gave Lee a nod. Lee straightened, his voice clear and firm as he addressed the fleet. Commander Zarek, this is Ambassador Lee of the Terran Federation. Your positioning within our boundaries is a clear violation of interstellar law. You have demonstrated an understanding of warfare, but I wonder if you understand diplomacy. I invite you to speak with me directly. If you continue this aggression, know that you will be held accountable not just to humanity, but to every peace-seeking species in the Galactic Council. Make your choice. The room fell silent, and they waited. Seconds stretched into minutes, the tension mounting as everyone watched the Asleal fleet. Then, with a flicker, Zarek's face appeared on the main screen. Ambassador Lee, he sneered, his tone mocking. Is this your idea of diplomacy? Hiding behind words and council laws? You humans are as weak as I expected. Lee met his gaze evenly. Diplomacy requires strength, Commander, strength to see beyond immediate conquest, to value something greater than domination. If you're incapable of that, then you have my pity. Zarek's expression darkened, a flicker of rage breaking through his controlled demeanor. You would pity the Asleal? Yes, Lee replied without hesitation. Because you're trapped in a world that sees only force. You call us weak because we don't strike out, but we are stronger than you know. Humanity understands sacrifice, and we know that sometimes the greatest show of strength is the refusal to give in to fear. A murmur of approval rippled through the command center, the humans exchanging glances of pride. Zarek's face twisted in frustration, his voice rising. This will be your undoing, Ambassador. One day, that precious restraint will fail you, and we will be there to claim what you leave behind. Lee's gaze was unwavering. Perhaps, but until then, we will stand here unbroken. And I promise you, Zarek, you will remember this day. With a growl of frustration, Zarek cut the feed. As his image vanished, Lee turned to Sarah, his voice quiet but steady. Status of the Asleal fleet? She looked down, checking the monitors. They're retreating, sir. Breaking formation and moving back to their designated space. A wave of relief washed over the room. Smiles broke out among the crew, soft murmurs of triumph replacing the tense silence. Lee allowed himself a small, exhausted smile, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him. Tevrin's voice returned, softer now, filled with approval. Well done, Ambassador. You have shown them a strength they could not fathom. Lee nodded, glancing out at the stars, the silent witnesses to the conflict that had just been averted. Today, yes, but they'll return, Tevrin. So long as they believe only in strength of arms, they'll keep testing us. Then let them, Tevrin replied calmly. For in every test, humanity proves that resilience is not weakness, but an unbreakable resolve. Lee took a deep breath, the enormity of the encounter settling into his bones. He had won a victory today, but he knew it was only one in a long line of challenges humanity would face. Still, he felt something shift within him, a deeper, quieter confidence in the path he had chosen. Humanity would hold the line, and they would do it with dignity. Stand down, everyone, he ordered, his voice carrying a warmth it hadn't had in hours. And thank you. Today, we've shown the universe what it means to be human. As the crew dispersed, a quiet sense of triumph filled the air. Humanity had faced down the darkness once more, and they had emerged not just unscathed but stronger, bound by a shared purpose and an unyielding resolve. Chapter 4. The Fire Within. The relief in the command center was short-lived. Just as the crew began to exhale, an alert blared from the control console. Commander Sarah's eyes went wide as she scanned the flashing data on her screen. Ambassador Lee, she called out, her voice edged with urgency. We're detecting multiple energy signatures. They're launching fighters from the outer edge of the Asleal fleet. They're mobilizing for a strike. Lee's stomach twisted, but he steadied himself, every ounce of his diplomatic calm pooling into his voice. So much for a retreat, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. Aloud, he spoke firmly. Bring the defensive grid online. Prepare all systems for a potential strike. The crew members scrambled to their stations, and the comm of the command center turned electric. The tactical displays showed red blips swarming across the screen, advancing from the Asleal's position like an unstoppable tide. This wasn't merely a warning. Zarek was calling humanity's bluff, daring them to prove their strength. Tevrin's crystalline form reappeared on the screen beside Lee, its voice even and calm, a striking contrast to the panic around them. Ambassador, it appears Zarek seeks to escalate beyond the realm of words. The Asleal believe that only through physical domination can they truly conquer. Lee nodded. They think they can break us by force alone, but they're about to learn just how resilient humanity can be. He turned to Sarah. Deploy defensive drones in grid formation. Send a message to Enceladus Prime to secure all civilians in protected zones. We're holding this line. Sarah's face was pale but resolute. Understood, Ambassador. She spoke into her comm, her voice laced with steel. All units, initiate defensive formation Gamma. Outside, a swarm of Terran drones launched into position, forming a tight lattice around the command ship. Their glowing shields shimmered in the darkness of space, each one pulsing with the energy of hundreds of microgenerators. The Asleal fighters swerved and dove, testing the lines, their sleek forms lit by the red glow of their weapon systems. As the fighters approached, the hum of the defensive grid activated, rippling like an invisible wave through the void. Laser fires streaked from the drones, intercepting the Asleal fighters with calculated precision. Explosions flared across the dark canvas, illuminating the stars in brief bursts of light. The control room erupted in cheers as one enemy fighter after another fell to the swarm of Terran drones. But the Asleal didn't waver. Their fighters pressed on, relentless, chipping away at the grid with each volley. Lee felt the weight of the situation pressing against his chest. One wrong move, one moment of weakness, and they'd be overwhelmed. Ambassador, Tevrin's voice broke through his thoughts. This conflict is inevitable. The Asleal are too entrenched in their beliefs to retreat. However, there may be a way to demonstrate strength without escalating further destruction. Lee's brow furrowed, focusing on the words. What do you have in mind, Tevrin? The crystalline being's eyes gleamed, a glint of hope mingling with wisdom. The Asleal respect force, yes, but they respect courage even more. If you were to confront Zarek, directly show him the face of humanity's resolve, he might be forced to rethink his tactics. Lee hesitated, understanding the gravity of Tevrin's suggestion. It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but it was also a chance to turn this fight into something greater. He took a deep breath, then nodded. Patch me through to Zarek's command vessel. Full visual, no encryption. Sarah looked at him, astonished. Ambassador, are you sure? If he doesn't respond, we'll still be no worse off, Lee replied, his voice calm but unwavering. This is our last chance for diplomacy. A moment later, Zarek's face filled the screen, his expression one of contemptuous amusement. The backdrop behind him was dark, lined with the sharp edges of Asleal technology. His eyes glinted, as if he'd been anticipating this. Ah, Ambassador Lee, I thought you might reach out, Zarek sneered. Are you here to beg for mercy? Lee met his gaze, unflinching. No, Zarek. I'm here to offer you a choice. Right now, our defenses are holding, and we've proven that your attack will cost you dearly. But if this continues, we both know innocent lives will be lost. Zarek chuckled, his tone mocking. You think I care for human lives? You misunderstand, Ambassador. This is a demonstration of superiority. Superiority? Lee's voice grew firm, every syllable carrying the weight of his conviction. Superiority is more than brute force. It's the strength to forge peace, to seek allies instead of enemies. Humanity knows what it means to endure, to overcome. We have faced challenges beyond what you could fathom, and we've come out stronger. Zarek's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing. You believe mere words can alter the path of the Asleal? I believe courage does, Lee replied. So here I stand, unarmed, willing to face you directly. Humanity will not bend to threats or intimidation. We may bleed, we may suffer, but we will never yield. The silence that followed was thick, Zarek visibly taken aback. For the first time, the Asleal commander seemed at a loss, his gaze flickering with uncertainty. Tevrin's voice echoed softly. The Asleal have never known a species willing to face death rather than submit. You may have planted a seed, Ambassador. The tension lingered, stretching across the room as Zarek studied Lee. Then, slowly, he leaned back, his expression unreadable. Very well, Ambassador Lee. I will withdraw for now. But know this, you're playing a dangerous game. Humanity will eventually fall, whether to us or another force. You cannot survive on defiance alone. Lee allowed himself a small, grim smile. We'll see, Commander. Humanity has a way of surprising those who underestimate us. With a final glare, Zarek severed the connection. The screen went dark, and a collective exhale rippled through the command center. Cheers erupted, a wave of triumph breaking the somber tension. They had done it. They'd faced down the Asleal without firing the final shot. Tevrin's image glimmered, its voice filled with admiration. You have shown them the strength that cannot be destroyed by weapons alone. Today, humanity has demonstrated a power beyond force, the power of conviction. Lee nodded, exhaustion creeping into his posture, but his heart swelled with pride. This is what it means to be human, he murmured. To stand, even when it's hard. to hold our ground, not out of anger, but because we know who we are. As the stars stretched out before him, untouched and vast, Lee knew this was only the beginning. The Asliel would return, others would come. But in this moment, humanity had carved a place in the galaxy, a place no one could ever take away. He turned to his crew, pride evident in his voice. Today, we showed them that strength is not just in arms but in spirit. Let this be a reminder, to them and to ourselves, that humanity's resolve is boundless. And as he spoke, the stars beyond the glass seemed to shimmer brighter, bearing witness to the unbreakable will of a species determined to endure.